I'm Crystal, and I live with my husband Alex and our cat Riley. Despite living with lupus, I try to enjoy life to its fullest. So come share in life's big and little moments with me. In my shoes. Hi guys, so it is October, and October is Bullying Awareness Month, and so I kind of wanted to take the time to bring attention to that because I am very firmly against bullying. It seems like bullying has gotten worse over the years, and it's now at a whole new level because there's the internet, and so there's cyberbullying, which is getting to be like really bad, and you know, it's affecting a lot of children's lives, and it's really sad. And so for Awareness Month, I thought I would share my story with you guys because I was actually bullied when I was a child, and it really affected me, and it still affects me in some ways, I find. So I just thought I would share it with you really quick. So basically, my bullying, I started getting bullied in kindergarten, believe it or not. You would never think that bullying would start in kindergarten, to be quite honest, but mine did, and it was pretty much like within a few weeks of starting kindergarten, you know, the bullying started. I grew up an only child. I have a half-sister, but she has a different mother, so of course she lived with her mother and her stepdad, and I was raised by my mother. And my sister and I, our father, he lived on his own. So I was raised with one parent, and I was an only child. And so I had a very big imagination, because when I was at home by myself and I didn't have a friend over, you know, I had to come up with ways to entertain myself. I didn't have a sibling to play with or whatever. And so I developed a really big imagination. And I think that could be where my love of the arts started, because, you know, as I got older, I started to get interested in acting, and I took a drama class, and then all throughout high school I was in the musical theater program, which, you know, you got to do acting, singing, and dancing. So I think, you know, my imagination like really kind of drove that, and like I would literally make up skits at home and act them out, and I had imaginary friends and, you know, things like that. And then from a very young age, like my mom told me, I believe I was like 1 year old when I first started singing. So apparently I think it was like Christmas. I had just turned 1 a couple weeks before Christmas, and someone, I think a friend of the family, had dressed up as Santa and came to my grandmother's house when all the family was there, and I was so excited to see Santa, and I apparently sang and danced for Santa. There's actually a picture of it. But anyways, so where I'm going with this is that when I was in elementary school, you know, like in kindergarten or whatever, I, you know, at recess time or playtime or whatever, had a very active imagination. And I had imaginary friends. And also, because I loved to sing, I would pretty much sing at school. So like if we were, you know, doing an art project or playtime or whatever the case may be, I was usually singing out loud. Not like really loud to disrupt the class, but I would just sing to myself quietly because I liked to sing. And And so that's basically where things started. Some kids thought I was weird. They thought it was weird that I was always singing, that I had imaginary friends, and they just thought I was weird. And so it started in kindergarten with people, calling me weird or saying I was strange, or that I was mental and things like that. And then it just progressed over the years. The older we got, and we all were the same students in the same class moving up together, and it just started to get worse the older I got. And then, they started calling me ugly. They started making fun of my appearance, still making fun of my singing and hobbies and whatever, and it was just constant, everyday bullying. They called me retarded. I mean, it was just stupid. I mean, like, they called me anything that you can really think of. And then it started to get to the point where kids were stealing stuff from me. But there was no way to prove it. I would try to tell the teacher, but there was no way to prove it. And the teachers really didn't do much. Like my mom always told me, tell your teacher. Well, the teachers really didn't do anything. And then it got to the point, like, people were pulling my hair. I think one time I had someone on the school bus put gum in my hair. Another time I had a kid, like, grab my backpack and hold it out the window on the school bus and threaten to throw it out the window. And I mean, again, the school bus driver is just driving along doing absolutely nothing to intervene or stop this. I then, the older we got, I then started having girls picking on me. I would get to school and they would surround me and they would threaten to beat me up, or they would, threaten to hurt my mom. I don't know where that started, but they started saying things about my mom, and it was just horrible. And it got to the point that I really just did not want to go to school. Every single morning when my mom would get me ready to go to school, I would cry and say I didn't want to go. And there was like one day in particular where I just refused to go to school. It didn't matter what my mom did. She was not getting me out the door. And so she was like, okay, you can stay home today, but you have to go tomorrow. And so, she got on the phone and talked to my teacher. And of course, like, they really were no help at all. They pretty much told my mom, well, your daughter is doing some strange things. And so they were telling her some of the things I was doing, which in fact, I was actually like acting out scenes from my favorite movies at recess. So, again, it was like artistic stuff, and really what else could I do, because no one wanted to play with me and I didn't have any friends. So I had to entertain myself some way at recess, so that's what I did. And so, lo and behold, instead of the bullies getting in trouble, what happened is my teacher suggested that I go in this group that met like once a day for, I don't know how long it was. I think it was like an hour a day. And I guess it was almost like some kind of a therapy group. But what really was weird about it is that when I went to this class, or whatever it was, is that all of the other kids that were in this were actually troublemakers, and like kids that were constantly getting in trouble at school for things. And I'm thinking, why am I here? What is this? Like, I don't do anything to get in trouble. I'm the one being picked on, so why am I in this group? Like, it really was bizarre. And so yeah, like I would come home crying every day. I would cry going to school. I'd cry at school. I mean, it was just horrible. And, you know, like, kids would push me. I mean, it was just awful. Now, as we started to get a little bit older, I think like around grade 3, grade 4, I did start to get a couple of friends at school. I do remember having one or two good friends of mine, and they would kind of try to stick up for me, and that was great. But all in all, like, my elementary school experience was terrible because I was just picked on constantly. And it really, you know, affected my self-confidence. I think that's what really made me a shy person. And I remember there was one day that we had a talent show, and I don't know how I got the guts to do this, but I got up the courage to do a dance routine, because at the time my mom had me in jazz dance classes, and I took the things that I was learning in the class and made up my own dance routine. And I remember like getting up to perform it, and I was so nervous, but I was like, I love dancing, you know, I want to show people that I have talent. And I got up, and I remember hearing people like snickering at me and like laughing at me while I was performing. So there was no end to it. So finally, you know, I was doing bad. I was getting bad grades and everything. The teachers weren't helping me with the work that I was having trouble with. And I would just sit there and be bullied while I'm trying to do my work. I could not concentrate. I was depressed. It was horrible. It just affected everything. And the teachers, like I said, they just really didn't do much at all to help. You know, like, I was actually like getting almost a failing grade in music class, which she had it. No one was helping me. And, you know, one thing that I am very thankful of is the fact that I had a mother who really loved me and who took good care of me. And she was a single parent, and so whenever she was working, my grandmother would come over and she would look after me. And my grandma was amazing too. Very loving, caring person. And so, you know, when I was at home, I felt totally safe. I felt completely loved. And I mean, pretty much all of my good childhood memories are from being at home. School was not a happy place. So, you know, being at home was great. I could not wait to get home every day, because I would, you know, my mom or my grandmother would play with me. We would play dolls together. We would play house together. My grandmother would, you know, do puzzles with me. She would like time me on how fast to do, I could finish a puzzle. Play games. I mean, we would go out to the park. It was just a lot of fun with my mother and my grandmother, and, you know, I loved being at home. So like I said, my mother had pretty much had it with the school. She was fed up with it. She, you know, she felt guilty sending me to school every day. So she pulled me out. She pulled me out of the school. It was a Catholic school that I was in at the time. And so she pulled me out of there and moved me across the street to the public school. And her only regret is that she didn't do that a lot sooner, because everything changed for me when I moved to this new school. It was a new start. No one knew who I was. They didn't know anything about my past and the bullying. And so I started grade 5 in this new school, and everything changed. My grades improved because the teachers really took their time to help me with the stuff I was behind in. And the teachers, they were good teachers. They made it fun. And they took care of stuff. And so I think from like my first day, I made a friend. And then it just grew from there. And by, I think it was in grade 6 that I decided to sing in front of my class for the first time, because we were doing a little cafe for the parents in our classroom one day, and the teacher was going to have us like sing songs and stuff. And so I stayed one day after school and asked my teacher if I could sing the song for her, and if she liked it, could I sing it in the cafe? And she was like blown away, because I was actually, even though I had started to make friends, I was still very much closed in. I was still very quiet, very shy. I kept to myself because I was so afraid of saying or doing something that would make people not like me and would start, people bullying me again. So I sang for my teacher. She was totally blown away. She's like, I didn't know you had this in you. She's like, definitely, you have to sing this at the cafe. And so I did. And I was so nervous the day that I did, because I was like, okay, the last time I did something like this, when I did my dance, I got laughed at. So I was really nervous, but lo and behold, it went over well. And people loved me. And so, like, the kids in the class were like coming up to me afterwards, like telling me how good I was and this and that. And so then by grade 7, I tried out for the talent show. And when I got up on stage and sang at the talent show, like the entire school gave me a standing ovation. And it was like, wow, like, it just was, it totally was a changing moment for me. But regardless of that, like, okay, performing kind of helped me get my confidence back a little bit. But I've always been very timid. I've always been on the shy side. I'm still on the quiet side. Like, if I don't know someone really well, I'm very quiet around them until I get to know them really well. It still affects me to this day. And one of the things is that I'm not a very assertive person. I do still get walked on quite a bit in, like when I've worked in, daycares or whatever. I've had, staff members walk all over me, and I don't know how to be assertive and stand up for myself, because I'm always so afraid of, people turning on me or whatever. So it still affects me to this day. So it's like, when kids are bullied, it really does affect everything in their life, and it can even affect them into their adult life. I don't know, it's something that still affects me. And getting back to at the new school, everything was great, until I started to have the issues with my bite, where my bite was shifting and my chin kind of like diminished. Like, I don't have much of a chin because of the way my bite is off. And at that time, so, it always looks like, well, right now I have put on weight, but back then I was a very skinny kid. I was totally skinny. I didn't have any fat on my body at all. But it always looked like I had like a double chin because of the way that my bite is. And so I did have like this one boy who did start to pick on me, and he used to like make jokes about my chin. And so then I started to get self-conscious again. And so it's kind of like one of those things where, like, you're bullied once, you kind of like become susceptible to being bullied the rest of your life, because you don't know how to stand up for yourself, and you are, you lack that confidence to do that, and you become timid and scared. And so, I did deal with a little bit of bullying in like grades, I think it was about grade 8, because of this. High school was pretty good. At my high school, I had tons of friends, more friends than I've ever had before. I was in the music theater program. I loved it. I got to sing and dance and act every day of high school. It was awesome. However, I ended up being bullied by 3 girls who lived in the apartment building next to me. My friends and I made the mistake of one day we were playing in my bedroom, and we saw these girls playing outside in the parking lot. And we decided to do like some prank on them. I forget what it was, but we like did something out my window. And at first they didn't even see us. And so we were just kind of like laughing in our room, like, because I think we were like making weird sounds or something like that and trying to like scare them or something. Like, where's the sound coming from? I don't know. We were just being stupid kids. But anyways, they kind of like ended up seeing us in the window. And they ended up being the wrong people to try pranking. They were not very nice. And so once they figured out where I lived, then, and it was all just from that one little prank that we did, that started it. And so once they found out where I lived and they saw my face, that was it. They started bullying me every day on my way home from school. They would taunt me, they would follow me, they would threaten to beat me up, and I got really scared because they were really like, I don't know, seemed more violent bullying than just words. And so then I remember there was one day, and this was a couple of months after I had my jaw surgery, which was like the worst time possible to be threatened to be beat up because I was still healing. I was walking home, and my mom, my grandmother had just told me, you know what, just try to ignore them. Don't, engage them, just keep walking. And so I tried that this one day that they were following me, and they were almost in my face, like yelling at me and threatening me. And I kept walking, and I got to the front of my building, and they basically stopped me in my tracks, and they started to push me. And then one of them smacked me in the face, and I was like, oh my God, like, I am going to be totally beat up. Like, they're going to beat me up. What's going to happen? Like, my jaw was healing. I'm like, oh my God, like, this is going to happen. And just as they were probably about to like shove me to the ground and start beating me up, this girl from my building who actually knew them because she actually went to their school, she came up to them and was like, hey, like, what's up, what's going on? And she kind of like intervened, and thank God for that, because she basically saved me. They ended up leaving, and she just walked me upstairs to my apartment. And so from that day forward, like, she kind of looked out for me on the way home. And so anyways, after that incident, we ended up calling the police, and it turns out that they had already been in trouble with the police quite a bit. So they were definitely troublemakers, and yeah, so that was a very scary situation. So I became extremely cautious and scared when I was having to walk by their apartment building every day when I would go to and from school. It was like a really scary time for me. They were always there, like every day. They knew what time I would get home, and they would threaten me, follow me. Even if my mom was with me, they would threaten me, they would threaten her. And so basically, I think it was my mother that spoke to my school, and there was a teacher that was kind enough to offer to drive me home every day. It was my art teacher, and thank God for that, because yeah. So finally it did settle down. I believe they ended up moving out of the neighborhood, and they moved out of that building altogether, and so then that's when it ended. But I think it was like about a year later, I was walking down the street near my building, and lo and behold, who's coming towards me is these three girls, and I'm like, what the heck? And so obviously they still lived within the same area, but they had just moved off of my street, like they had moved out of the building beside me. So then I started to get very scared again, to the point where like I did not want to leave my street, because like I didn't want to walk to the corner store anymore by myself or whatever, because I was so scared of running into them again. And so like, you know, if I saw them coming, I would go to the other side of the street, or I would just take like a detour so that they didn't see me. I mean, I was like terrified. And so that was basically the last time that I was bullied. And like I said, I've had situations where certain coworkers in daycares I've worked at are very overpowering and like bossy, and you know, kind of in a way bullying with me, and I've never known how to like stick up for myself, and I get very like timid and shy. And yeah, so it still affects me to this day. It, you know, it bothers me that I didn't get to enjoy school, like, you know, and have friends to play with and stuff like that. And I mean, thankfully I did have some friends in my neighborhood when I was a kid, like in some of the other buildings on our street. You know, we would play outside together, and they were fine with me, and that was great. So I mean, I did have friends, but it wasn't a lot, and they weren't what I would consider close friends, like a best friend. And you know, it was just an awful experience going to school every day, like being so scared to go to school because I didn't know, you know, what would be said to me that day, you know, what would be stolen from me, or would I be beat up, or, you know, I never knew where it was going to go next. So, I mean, I can't even imagine, like, if we had the internet back then, what would have happened. Like, I can just see the cyberbullying being horrible. I mean, because, you know, like, at least, like I said, I could escape from it, and I could go home, and I could be in a safe place. But now it's like you get bullied at school, and then you go home and they're bullying you on the computer. So it's like you can't get away from it now. So, you know, it's really important, I think, like from a young age, to instill in children to love each other and respect each other, and to know that everyone is different, but that's okay, because if everyone was the same, the world would be really boring. And for anyone out there who's currently being bullied, just know that it does get better. Like, you will grow up, they'll grow up, you know, eventually it'll be over. And while you'll still carry it with you, you'll grow, and, you know, things will get better. You know, like, there were some times when I was a kid that I thought, oh, you know, I just want to die. Like, you know, I never actually attempted suicide, but it crossed my mind sometimes. But, you know, like, you just have to hang in there and just know that there are people that care about you and there are people that love you, and, you know, it will get better. Just hold on and, you know, just do your best to get through it and just be yourself and really don't care what other people say. I know it's hard and it's easier said than done, but it will get better. Trust me, it will get better. Like I said, you know, even though I still experienced some bullying near my home with those girls threatening to beat me up, in high school, I had tons of friends. I actually, the day that those girls started smacking me and were about to beat me up, as soon as I got upstairs, because my mother was actually at work that day and my grandmother wasn't there that day, so I was by myself. As soon as I got home, I called my best friend, and she lived about, I guess it's about like a 10 to 15 minute walk from my apartment. And she ran all the way over to see if I was okay and stay with me until my mom got home. So I did end up having really good friends who ended up being really caring friends. They cared about me. They were there for me. So it will happen and it will get better. And just spread the awareness this month. You know, like, we really need to get bullying over and done with. It needs to end. And so yeah, I just thought I would share my story with you, and I don't want to go on forever, but definitely spread the awareness this month, and let's stop bullying, okay guys? Be nice to each other. You know, like, I love watching Ellen every day, and I love that she ends her show with be kind to one another. Every single day she says be kind to one another. And that's what we really need to do. Just be kind to one another. You know, this world is crazy and there's so much crap that's going on now in the world, and if every single person was just kind to one another, like, it would be such a better place. So, yeah, so let's spread the awareness this month, guys. Thank you so much for listening to my story. You know, I hope maybe you will share yours if you were bullied, and let's just spread the awareness. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. And I've put a little bit of glittery lip gloss, so I am ready to go. I'm gonna head out, so let's go.